The United States in the 1860s was a land in fracture and flux. To the east, its cities and fields burned with civil war, brother against brother, state against state. To the west, the frontier unfurled with quiet violence, a slow-motion collision between settlers, soldiers, and sovereign nations of the plains. The Republic was being tested at both its heart and its horizons. Caught in this violent duality was the military art of reconnaissance. No longer confined to formal doctrine or romantic ideals, recon now bent to terrain, culture, and urgency. It would become something sharper, more intuitive, more improvisational. And in that evolution, it would leave deep, bloody footprints across both Gettysburg's ridges and the high plains of Montana. At the war's outset, neither North nor South possessed a modern concept of reconnaissance. Most armies moved blind, relying on cavalry by necessity, not by design. The Union cavalry, burdened by Napoleonic baggage and institutional inertia, struggled to read the battlefield. Local guides and occasional scouts filled the gaps, but poorly. Intelligence came late, if it came at all. The South, outmanned and outgunned, moved faster. Their cavalry wasn't just mounted, it was mobile in spirit. J.E.B. Stuart emerged not only as a cavalryman, but as a symbol of mounted reconnaissance's theater. He moved fast, struck boldly, and made sure everyone heard about it. His 1862 ride around McClellan's army wasn't just a recon success. It was a statement, a psychological incision. It made Northern generals second-guess their own eyes. But Stuart's rides, for all their dash, sometimes erred on the side of drama over utility. Speed replaced clarity. Raids blurred into parades. And in the chaos of war, information delayed was information denied. On the Union side, a painful education began. The cavalry, scorned for its early failures, began to reform. Intelligence became a discipline, not a hope. Alan Pinkerton's Bureau of Military Information marked the first American attempt at strategic intelligence. Flawed, often paranoid, but foundational. When Colonel George Sharp took the reins, it matured into something approaching modern tradecraft. Prisoners, intercepted dispatches, local informants, these weren't just notes in a ledger. They became puzzle pieces in a battlefield mosaic. Technology entered too. Tethered balloons offered a God's eye view above the trees. Signal flags and telegraphs began to stitch commanders together across distance. The battlefield was no longer just horizontal. It was layered, vertical, abstract. Nowhere was this more apparent than at Gettysburg. General John Buford's cavalry didn't arrive to charge. They arrived to see. Buford read the terrain, understood its value, and held the high ground until the rest of the Union Army could arrive. His actions didn't just contribute to victory, they shaped it. Reconnaissance wasn't behind the battle anymore. It was steering it. And then there were the civilians, operating in silence, in secrecy, often in skirts. Elizabeth Van Lew in Richmond, Belle Boyd in the Valley. Their networks moved information in whispers and ciphered letters. Their maps, drawn by engineers with boots worn thin and compasses clenched like lifelines, informed entire campaigns. They turned domestic space into a theater of war. But as the Civil War drew to a brutal close, a different kind of conflict stirred in the shadows beyond the Mississippi. The Indian Wars, as they would be called, were not wars in the conventional sense. No grand armies met in open fields, no clear front lines. What the army faced instead was a fluid, decentralized resistance, one that moved with the land, vanished into it, and knew every curve of canyon and ripple of stream. It was not just unfamiliar ground, it was hostile intelligence terrain. Here, traditional recon methods failed. Scouts were often too slow, patrols too loud, columns too rigid. The land itself betrayed the uninitiated, and those who moved across it without wisdom were punished quickly. The Fetterman massacre made this brutally clear. Despite warnings from experienced scouts and allied tribes, officers pushed forward into an ambush that killed them all. It was not a failure of courage. It was a failure to listen. So the army began to adapt. They did not just use native scouts. They needed them. The Crow with Custer, the Apache with Crook. These men were not simply trackers. They were intelligence professionals in the purest sense, interpreters of landscape, movement, intent. They could read a hillside the way a city dweller reads a newspaper, a broken twig, a silence where there should be birdsong, the direction of a breeze. Each carried meaning. But trust was a brittle currency. These scouts were essential and suspect all at once. Their motives questioned, their knowledge relied upon, but never fully embraced. And yet, time and again, it was their insight that saved lives. And sometimes, it wasn't enough. At Little Bighorn, Custer ignored the counsel of his own scouts, dismissed it, divided his force, and died for it. In that moment, the lesson burned itself into American doctrine. Information unheeded is as fatal as no information at all. The Army began to reframe reconnaissance. No longer a sideline function, it became a mindset. Small units acted with autonomy. Scouts embedded with infantry. Officers were trained to look, to listen, to read the ground as well as the orders. Reconnaissance in the Indian campaigns wasn't just about finding the enemy. It was about understanding the context of the fight. Culture, environment, intention. It was war interpreted. The lessons were hard-won and soaked in loss, but they were foundational. As the 20th century neared, with its radios and engines, with its cameras in the sky and tanks on the ground, those lessons endured. Buford's timing, Stuart's mobility, Van Loo's quiet defiance, the Crow Scouts' word of warning on a frigid morning. These moments echoed beyond the camps and canyons. They became the marrow of modern intelligence. In the twilight between two centuries, American reconnaissance stepped out of the fog. It bore the scars of two very different wars, but also their insights. And in those shadows, it learned to see.